Thanks everybody for joining today's webinar. What is a traceability management system, and does your food or supplement business need one? So before we get started, I do want to introduce our special guest today. Manish is the co-founder at TagOne and CTO. He brings a tremendous amount of experience to the organization and the industry. Previously was an executive at SAP and led a lot of track and traceability initiatives along with serialization in the pharmaceutical sector. Knows technology, understands process and integration. So Manish, it's great to have you, buddy.
Thank you, Joe, for having me for this session. This topic is very close to my heart, so I'm very happy to be here.
Oh, for sure. We've got the right guy on the phone. So before, what I want to do is get started and ask a quick poll, which is, I'm going to shoot this out to everybody. Which stage are you in the traceability management system? And if everybody wants to give a quick vote on that, I'll share some of these a little bit later in the results just to see where everybody's at in their traceability management system journey. And while we're starting to get those answers, some things we're going to cover today is what is a traceability management system? Just kind of a level set us. What are some of the high level benefits of having a system and who needs one? And sometimes just as important as who doesn't need one. What's it do? What's it look like? And when is the right time to implement them? And what are the first steps? And then what are the questions to ask right before you invest in the technology? So quick response from our listeners. It was basically split between never heard of it until this webinar and chatters starting at their business, and also they have a traceability management system already in place. So we've got a nice diverse list, a good response from everybody. So real quick, Manish, in your words, how do you define what is a traceability management system?
Well, the term traceability management system is a relatively new term, and as the name suggests, it refers to systems and processes which enables an organization to capture traceability and transparency data at source and be able to share this data at short notice to their customers or regulatory authorities if they ask for it. But before we kind of talk about the core functionalities of what a traceability management system should do, and why the industry needs such a capability, we kind of first need to reflect on how our food supply chain has evolved over the years. Just to take an example, if you think about, say, buying milk, only a few years or decades ago, a local milkman will hand deliver the milk every day from a local farm. In fact, as a kid, I remember during my summer break when I used to visit my grandparents, daily morning, I used to go with my grandfather to a local dairy farm, and my grandfather will handpick the cow for that day's milk. We'll talk to the farmer, we'll discuss what the cow had, and a lot of things which I don't want to talk about here. But that's how it was back those days, where we had full visibility in terms of what we are consuming. Now, if we come back to today's date, if I go to a store and I pick a can of milk, most often I have no idea where that milk is sourced from. And the reason this has happened is, of course, our supply chain has become more a complex web of various participants, as shown in this picture here, which are increasingly global, located all around the world. In a way, it's not a bad thing, because the globalization of food production trade has opened up the access to food, made prices competitive, and kind of increased customer options. But it also made the supply chain longer and much more complex. And the journey from farm to fork has become less and less transparent, almost opaque. We have no idea what ingredients, where they're sourced from when we kind of buy anything from the shelf at a retail store. It's not that people are not collecting the data. In fact, I would say most of the participants, or say majority of them in the food supply chain, are collecting some of the data attributes which you're seeing here, like a farmer, processor, the attributes being shown below. But they most often keep their records to themselves, or at best basically share one up, one down, which is also, we have seen, a little bit uncommon. And these records are most often kept disjointed in paper files, in your own computer, in your own laptop, if you have some amount of automation and systems, maybe in multiple systems, and most often are vulnerable to inaccurate updating. So in this slide, you're seeing kind of a typical food supply chain where the participants are storing these data elements for activities they're performing. And as I said, most often being stored in a paper kind of a format. So what basically happens is, God forbid, if any issue occurs, inadequate track and trace capabilities may cause a lot of delays in investigation. It's very difficult if the origination point of that issue is not identified. Then most often, even though the issue was with a single batch, most often the complete product needs to be pulled out from the shelf. And I would say everyone we talk to, including regulators, growers, processors, distributors, suppliers, retailers, anyone, and consumers, of course, everyone say that they would benefit and could avoid a lot of delay and waste if there is traceability and transparency. So coming back to our term, the traceability management system, it kind of refers to a system which enable capturing and storing these key data elements digitally. So if you have a system on top which can store and capture these elements digitally, and of course, if you ask someone what their wish would be from end-to-end traceability perspective, how to achieve this, the ideal or utopian answer would be: what if we had an industry database, saying single database, which is secure and everyone can push the data to that database, and only if you are authorized you can view the data, otherwise it's secured. That's the utopian answer, which is, of course, is in a perfect world would work, provided it's a secure environment. Only those who have access can access it. And in that kind of a word, this will be a perfect kind of a solution. But if we come back to reality, such a solution in a real world may be very difficult to achieve. And what we may end up is multiple systems providing these kind of functionality. And ideally, they should be able to talk to each other in an interoperable way, so that if end-to-end traceability needs to be kind of achieved, or if there is an outbreak for which you need to trace back to the source, you are able to do that quickly. And the good thing is, this is not like the first industry where we have this requirement and where something like this is being tried.
Right.
In fact, I spend majority of my time in the life sciences space. In fact, in late 90s, early 2000s, I was doing a lot of pilots to try something like this in the prescription drugs. Basically, the use case was a little different. It was more to secure the supply chain and avoid counterfeiters introducing fake drugs. But again, the same challenges, same problems, and the industry was struggling to come up with something similar. And what kind of pushed the industry to kind of achieve this was international regulation. Similarly, a regulation in US called Drug Supply Chain Security Act, which kind of pushed the industry to achieve this. And there was a lot of effort put in by the industry to achieve this standardization and interoperability. And if we come back to our industry right now, one of the game-changing events which has happened recently is something similar, wherein in the food sector, FDA has come up with a new era of smart food safety proposed regulation, which requires additional traceability records for certain foods. This new proposed regulation is applicable for certain food which are part of the food traceability list, for which every participant in the supply chain need to keep additional traceability records. But even though this is for certain food which is currently part of the list, but this proposed law is going to lay the foundation for all the food items to follow, paving for the way for industry to adopt and harmonize and scale towards a digital end-to-end traceability system.
Yeah, it's definitely quite a change that we're looking to get here, and I know there's some fear around that. But what do you think are some of the key benefits to people implementing a traceability management system?
Right. So the benefit, in fact, is going to come, and we can basically lay down the benefits as per these three core pillars, Joe. But before even I touch upon this benefit, just one last thing on the FDA part of it, what I wanted to kind of increasingly highlight, that FDA is going to kind of give guidance and direct. In fact, they have already started doing that. They have given guidance in terms of the way the lot needs to be created, the product identifiers. So they are basically providing a direction which will help us basically standardize a lot of these data elements which needs to be captured from a traceability perspective, which even though like if we have different players in the industry and they may not have any of those items in the food traceability list, but still want to achieve, because in the end, this is coming for every food, as Frank Yanis, the deputy commissioner, has said. And if someone wants to kind of replicate the same model, it is quite possible now. So that's where I would like to end the previous topic. But coming back to the benefits, as I said, could be grouped under three pillars: reduce legal and regulatory risk, improve operational efficiency, and satisfy consumer and other stakeholder demands. But perhaps the most obvious benefit is compliance with increasing stringent regulations. Transparent supply chain also kind of will reduce reputational risk, as we have seen with some companies where their reputation got murked because of certain issues which happened, and also enhance the company's standing as a trustworthy enterprise. Another benefit is, of course, increased consumer trust and satisfaction. In fact, there are a number of studies conducted, and I think in this slide we have listed one of the studies which shows that brand loyalty increases and customers are more loyal and willing to pay a premium for a transparent brand, as per the study from Pure Branding done in 2018. Finally, there are a lot of important operational benefits too. Gathering more detailed information on supply chain performance will help company identify opportunities for improvement and to plan more effectively over the long term. Other benefits, like I think you have been instrumental in, like from our side, partnering with few of the companies in insurance sector who are like excited to have a solution like this, which can kind of reduce the premiums which they charge for the various supply chain participants going forward if they have a solution like a traceability management system implemented. So which could be some monetary benefit to implement something.
I think generally what we're seeing is this shift from operating businesses in an opaque manner to a more transparent manner. And if we look at all the stakeholders in an organization, which it's certainly our customers, and customers could be wholesale, certainly in the end, it's consumers, our employees, regulators, insurance companies, vendors. People will, if they trust you more, sometimes there's a benefit that's hard to put your finger on, but in the insurance sector, there's like a tangible benefit. Hey, we see how you're operating and have confidence there. But eventually something I put in here too, which is if you want to sell your business at some point in time and somebody can have visibility in your business, that it, at a minimum could reduce the diligence process, at a maximum certainly could potentially increase the value. So it's just a whole new way of thinking. And then again, in this case is getting a system to help with that. So I'd be curious for the audience, when you were to look at, why you may implement, and even if you don't have one now, but if you were to, what would be your biggest reason for considering a traceability management system? So if everybody can kind of give their reasons or the reasons why their company is doing it, would be helpful, and then we can give some thoughts on that as well. Give everyone a second. And while we're waiting for that poll to come through, we'll start to ask Manish, what some of the key considerations are to implementing a traceability management system. Manish, I assume this isn't something that just happens fast, right? Like you may just not hand an ID and password over to somebody and they get started and magic occurs. So what do companies need to think about prior to implementing a tech traceability system?
Yeah, George, you're correct. Like this is not a sprint, this is a marathon. And so this is going to be achieved in steps and will take time to achieve. But tech traceability is more like an enabler and for achieving transparency and traceability. And in fact, there have been multiple initiatives across industry, which has proved that when it is combined with the right process discipline, can address the industry transparency needs quickly and comprehensively. And in fact, I would say there are two things which kind of merge together. There has been this need which is coming up for traceability and transparency, while parallelly there has been a lot of advancements in emerging technologies like cloud solutions, IoT, smart devices, blockchain, etc., which can basically provide like a backbone when coupled with industry best practices and global data standards to enable end-to-end supply chain transparency and traceability, and which perhaps would have been more a dream, say a few years or decades back, but could become a reality now. So key considerations before, I would say, committing to this kind of initiatives is, first of all, we need to identify the key drivers, which basically are which you have in terms of embarking on this journey. Uh, is it the regulatory need which is kind of driving you? Is it like currently you are struggling with getting this information, even though you're collecting it, but when the need comes for you to gather that information, it is very cumbersome and difficult for you to kind of collect and present that data? Or are your customers demanding it? In fact, I would say the word is changing, and in fact, now probably at least I can say, if I have like gray hairs, and probably when I was young, at least I did not care what I was eating. But but now things are changing. In fact, my daughter is like so particular. Like anything she consumes, it's. I was initially thinking it's maybe because age. I'm now very careful, but it's not only the age. Even my daughter, who is not on the same age, is very particular about what she is consuming, what she is eating, what ingredients are there in that food product. She does her research before she consumes everything, and the
That's
word is going to.
interesting. Yep.
Yep, and the word is going to, like, the consumer behavior is changing, and as we become more and more knowledgeable, consumers are also becoming more demanding. So if consumers is the reason, and consumers are driving this change, which is forcing, even if you are not a brand owner, you are, say, ingredient provider, maybe your downstream customers may be pushing you because their consumers are pushing them. So you need to identify what is the key driver, which is kind of embarking you on this journey. And once you are on the path of traceability, kind of end-to-end traceability, or even traceability within your four wall premises in terms of one up, one down also, then you start looking at, maybe I take the cue from the FDA kind of guidance, identify the key tracking events which you would like to track. And for each of these tracking events, identify the key data elements which needs to be captured for each of these tracking events. And ideally, maybe start small, maybe even do, if you are not using the spreadsheets and all, maybe try it with spreadsheet to see if you can manage this end to end. What this picture is showing here, if say you're a manufacturer, if you're trying to do one up, one down, you identify the key tracking events as a manufacturer. Of course, the manufacturing is one of the key events. For example, and all the ingredients which you're sourcing for that manufacturing runs are the events which you would like to track. All the documents, all the supporting kind of attributes and documents for those events you would like to identify and capture. Try it out with maybe a spreadsheet, because there is a lot of activity involved in achieving this end-to-end traceability. Just not data capture. You need to have processes. You need to set up your master data correctly. You need to have your systems in place to manage that. And start small, and the easiest is basically then scale up.
Excellent. So real quick update on the survey, then we'll get into some of those key reasons which you may have gathered from the survey. How about half the people looked at risk as for their main motivator? About 25% provenance. They want people to know where their product comes from. Is it organic? Is it something unique? And then the other one is regulatory pressure. So pretty good blend. But I want to go back to some of those components, which is, again, why initiate transparency? And it really comes, we work with a variety of companies, and sometimes they come certainly with a mix of these, but some are more important than others. Some people just says, man, our paper's all over the place. We can't track everything. We think that this system can and help us get organized, have what we call like a central repository or a central source of truth, and people can log in from different locations and aggregate the data. And that can tie into growing organizations to realize, as they're adding more people, that they need better systems. If you're a small company, you can usually get by, as Manish mentioned, with spreadsheets. But usually it actually starts with culture. Companies that are focused on quality, they're focused on transparency, they're focused on maybe have an organic or biodiversity or sustainable product. It tends to be more important for them because it's already built into their fabric. And then the product differentiation, that provenance, we talked about that side, and the regulatory pressure. But something to think about, as Manish mentioned before, which is resources. So starting small, starting with spreadsheets and going from there, if you don't have the capacity to manage a spreadsheet, an organization, getting a software system is going to be challenging. You just something you need to think about whether you bring somebody else on board or get organized. It's certainly not a magic bullet in any capacity. So Manish, talk a little bit about like what does a traceability management system do, right? So we talked about how it can help people, but what's it going to do for folks?
Yep. We kind of already discussed so far that a traceability management system captures traceability and transparency data by recording the key traceability events and key data elements for each of these events as they occur in a supply chain. Uh, the challenge is to do that and figuring out how to capture the data and how to share the data. In fact, specifically, this becomes more and more challenging if various supply chain events are performed by your extended supply chain, be it your suppliers, contractors who are performing these activities on your behalf. Uh, in if you and most often that's the real world where we are in, and this is where the traceability management system becomes critical, but because it is a layer on top, basically, which should support easy there are multiple ways to capture the data, let me put it that way, or an easy way to capture the data. For example, what we have seen is reluctance for we can have a network basically wherein each of the participants can have their individual accounts and they basically perform the activities, of course, which is one way and which is an ideal way to do it. But we have seen reluctance specifically in today's world, wherein a lot of times your stakeholders may be reluctant to go into another system and basically enter the data. Yeah. So then we talk about various ways. Is it are they having the data in their system and we can connect to them? That's one way. Or most often, the easiest what we have seen is have simple spreadsheets, Excels and CSV files. If you have templates available to them, you just periodically ask them to kind of give them the templates. They upload, they enter the data, send you those templates, and you just upload, or basically they manually they just go and upload it, or you or put it in a folder, and we basically pick it up periodically, or they provide it to you and you upload it. So yeah, so short answer is TMS should be able to kind of provide all these capabilities for easy data capture, and should provide capability to share the data with your customers, with your partners. And the data is not only just capturing about the, like, I would say, if we just look at, say, the FDA proposed law, it's purely from a traceability perspective. But if you are doing something like this, personally, you would like this to be a single source of a repository for all your regulatory needs. So you should be able to capture all the supporting documentation for that event. For example, if you're doing a manufacturing, you should be able to capture the master manufacturing records. You should be able to capture any of the supporting documents like test results, certifications, certificate of analysis, etc., as a part of that transaction, so that you should be in a click, like it should be just a click away to get any information you need about a specific lot number from this kind of a system. Of course, this system, if it is capturing data to this level, will be able to help you in multiple ways. It should be able to help you do pinpointed recalls and returns. And in fact, ideally, a TMS system should basically have a full recall management capability, wherein your current SOPs should be digitally translated into activities which you can easily monitor when, God forbid, a recall happens. And if you do all this, there are certain other benefits which automatically comes, which is basically it provides you more visibility. You have better inventory management. Like, of course, it's not playing the role of an inventory management system, but it can if there are smaller companies who don't have other systems managing that, because it is having such granular data. If it's a regulatory system, it should have audit logs and it should comply to all the CFR, etc., etc. So in a nutshell, this is what I would say broad capabilities of transportation management systems that they need to have. But in the end, again, I would re-emphasize that your traceability management systems should basically be a single source of truth for all your traceability and transparency need, be it regulatory, operational, or even what your customers may be demanding. So it should be able to kind of provide the details which you would like to share with your customers, even end customers.
Awesome. So don't read like the read, the listeners can flip through these, but we'll send this out later. So Manish, let me ask you a question. Everybody has different needs, right? We've got people on attendees who are from produce, hemp and CBD, dietary supplements. Of a lot of these components and a lot of the ones you listed before, what if somebody doesn't need them all? How should a traceability management system adapt that? Or, and if you can also maybe answer if they have other software solutions, whether it's an ERP or an accounting system, are those consider like what should somebody consider as far as APIs and the systems talking to one another?
So again, based on the objective, a traceability management system should be able to scale up to that kind of a requirement. So if only say traceability is the minimum need, and you have only few traceability events which you would like to capture, that's the bare minimum a traceability and transparency system should be able to do. But of course, as I was pointing out earlier, it should be able to scale up to do even much more than that, wherein it can act as a single source of your repository for all your regulatory and legal requirements. And it can also provide you a lot of those operational capabilities, which I talked about. And if you have your existing systems, like say, for example, if you have implemented a lot of these functionalities in your ERP and which is able to provide all these details, uh, yeah, and or you have custom reports on your ERP, which is currently doing that, that's basically something similar to what a traceability management system do, which is perfect. But yeah, your ERPs, etc., should be scalable enough to share this data to the outside world, because that's where slowly we are moving towards, specifically with some of these upcoming regulations which are coming up. In terms of APIs, etc., as I said, currently most of the companies don't have a single kind of a source of truth, or single system which can provide all these information which I'm talking about. Your ERP may have some of it, you may have some of the other details in some other places, a lot of it could be manual. And if the need be to have a single repository which can do all this, then you just get the data from whatever systems you currently have into your TMS system, and figure out a way to basically join the dots together and have one single place for all the source of truth.
It sounds like flexibility is really important as organizations and people are considering, which one to choose and which path to go, for sure. So another poll question for you. As Manish just shared a lot of the key features that are important for a traceability management system, what are most important for you guys? And as you guys are filling that out, we'd love to take a look and see what does it look like and what features should be included. So Manish, talk us through what are we looking at here as people are looking at this and also answering the last poll question.
Yeah, sure, Joe. So what we have here is a screenshot from our TagOne traceability management system. So one of the key things, or the key functionality which I was talking about, is the capability to get this information with few clicks. So if you would like to get details of a specific lot which you manufactured or which you sourced from somewhere and shipped it out to your customer, how can you retrieve all the data and get the full provenance of that lot easily from a system like this? So this is one of the very key report which we call the traceability report in our system, wherein you can just go into the specific, select a specific item, select a specific lot number, and it has two views. What this picture is showing is a graphical view, which is showing pictorially the provenance of that product, how this product came into picture. This is basically an example of a green tea pomegranate. It's a tea, a green tea in a bottle with pomegranate as a flavor, which basically has 4 ingredients. So it's kind of blowing up and showing the specific ingredients, where they are sourced from. In fact, it is going back, at least for one of the ingredients, which is the green tea, all the way back to the farm from where it was sourced. So this is pictorially representing it. There is another view, which is called a tabular view, which is more detailed, which basically you should be able to get any kind of quality documents, any kind of regulatory documents. If master manufacturing record you want to see for this specific manufacturing run, you should be able to just go to the tabular view, click of a button, be able to get that. If you want to see the quality results for the ingredients, you can just click and get that. This is an example how to capture the data. So how to, from source, this is capturing the first mile data. So this is an example where we work with one of the industry body to figure out how we can capture the farm data specifically. And for this kind of scenario, these farmers were all over the world, specifically in the developing world, how we can simplify the process of data capture using cell phones or iPads, how we can offline capture the data, be able to collate it together in a cloud solution, and be able to kind of provide end-to-end traceability right from the source. We identified as a part of this initiative some of the key data elements which you would like to capture as a part when this activity happens. For example, the water, soil, the fertilizer information. If it was a greenhouse, basically capturing the details, the locations, etc. And some of this basically is also being proposed in this FDA Smarter Food initiative. Not the attributes, but at least capturing this data at the farm or maybe at the first receiving location.
This is really, really interesting in that it seems, having the capability for, seed to sale, tracking everything, and also being able to manage complex blends. It's not simply a mango that's going, of course, we all know produce has its own complexities, but, capturing complex capabilities is something to consider, as well as, hey, where does an organization fit in the supply chain? Are we just importing? Are we processing? We need to do one up, one back. Are we vertically integrated? All these, a lot of considerations as companies consider which company to work with, which traceability management to consider. If somebody's consumer brand, what should they be thinking about also?
Right. So this is like very close to me. And specifically as a father of a kid who is allergic to milk, I struggle to basically find products with these kind of details. Like believe me, before that, I always used to think how difficult it can be. But once you are in this situation, you realize how difficult it is to basically do this research. Anything new which I would like to introduce for my daughter, I find it like challenging to figure out, like, does that in product, can I be confident that it doesn't contain any milk ingredient in it? And which is where we kind of extensively worked, because we also believe in the end this story has to be shared with your consumers, specifically for the branded customers. How we can, if you're capturing all this information, how we can basically simplify the content and share this data with your customers in a lucid way, so that they can understand. Of course, if the visual map which I kind of showed you at the back, maybe that may be too much of a detail for a consumer, and they may get inundated and not make any sense out of it. So one of the functionalities which I believe is how we can simplify this whole data capture, how we can simplify this data sharing with your end consumers, wherein a lot of the content needs to be managed, what needs to be shared with your consumers, how to make it simple. So if you have a phone, we are showing you a QR code for in this slide for one of the product which is using our solution, to see basically what I'm talking about. So this is a supplement, and you can, its QR code is available on the jar, basically on the bottle which you purchase from the store, or if you can also order online. So you can go to the website and basically click on that item, click on the specific lot which they're currently selling, and kind of see similar kind of details on their website. But what it kind of provides is the visibility of the data which I'm looking at. Be very sure what the ingredients are, be very sure where these ingredients are sourced from, be able to look at the certificate of analysis of this product to be very sure, and at least this company is doing a third-party testing, so be very sure, yeah, this is a quality product which I can trust. And also look at every aspects of the ingredients, like where they're sourced from, and be very confident, at least for me, that it doesn't contain milk. So if this is something I'm giving to my child, I am be very assured that I don't have any risk.
You hit on something I think is important to note, which is, this goes back to the benefits, right? So for you, I imagine if you came upon a brand that you felt was going out of your way to protect your child, right? So what does that build? Brand loyalty, and the data supports that. And we shared one stat before, but there's a lot of data we have that can talk about the impact of transparency initiatives, which lead to traceability, can have for brand loyalty. It clearly reduces risk, because if there's a food product that is an allergen that's not supposed to be in there and there's an incident that occurs, well, now there's potential lawsuits. And of course, you already should be doing this anyway from an operational perspective. So how this all fits in. So if you're going to do it from an operational perspective, then you're reducing risk, and let's take advantage of that. Let's do some things that are going to help the organization. So, from your perspective, Manish, when should a company be implementing a traceability management system, and what are the first steps?
Yeah, so as I said, like the way the world is moving towards, I would say eventually either everyone is doing something already. Maybe they may, as I said, they may be capturing these records in paper or in spreadsheets and storing it somewhere. And probably currently it is meeting their needs. But in the end, I would say as this traceability and transparency becomes more pervasive, either through these regulatory drivers which are happening, or as I said, through the increased customer demand, more and more companies are going to basically jump in this bandwagon and start looking at it at more digitizing this data in a solution like the one which we're calling it as a traceability management system. Again, it doesn't have, it could be your ERP probably which may be doing this, but in the end, some system having these kind of capabilities which should be able to provide this kind of data at short notice to your downstream customers if they are demanding it, to regulators if they are demanding it, or basically be storing this data so that you, if some, God forbid, something bad happens, you are able to basically get this data at short notice and be able to make it available to regulatory authorities. We talked about various drivers apart from regulatory needs and customer needs, and those could also be your drivers, for example, improving operation efficiency, etc., etc. But the short answer is this is, as we keep saying, is not a sprint. This is a marathon. And if this is something very new to you, probably you need to start small and kind of, if you have a vision that eventually you would move towards a full end-to-end traceability with customer adoption, you may like to break it up into multiple phases and come up with kind of a roadmap wherein you basically start small and basically try to move towards your end goal of having end-to-end traceability. Now, to do this, as I said initially, maybe start with a spreadsheet, for example, because once, if you are not doing this, if everything is paper right now, um, there will be a little struggle, because for something like this to work, your baseline needs to be there in terms of the way you set up your master data, the way you manage your processes and documents, and maybe a spreadsheet will help you understand that if we are digitally linking some of these elements, the key importance the master data play there, the key importance the processes play in, for example, the way you are running your processing or manufacturing, for example, may need to be tweaked a little bit for you to have good visibility. If you can't put it on paper, the traceability, or in a spreadsheet, there is no way you can do it on a system, for example.
Right.
That's what,
right.
So you should be able to say that, yeah, even with paper document, even with spreadsheet, I am able to trace back because my processes are very clearly defined and I have my master data set up very clearly. And now I'm, at least on paper and on spreadsheet, be able to do that. So the next logical step is to maybe move towards digitizing it, which is basically the next phase. Looking at some systems like the one which we're talking about, or looking at your current systems which can scale up to meet these kind of functionality. You try to automate, you try to digitize, and you try to link together all the quality documents or regulatory documents, as I was talking about.
Yep.
And once you once you have your in-house processes digitized and managed on a system like this, then probably look at the network expansion, because that's the next logical step. Again, this is the way we would like to kind of break it up in terms of baby steps. Thing is, some of these may get, at least for some of the food products which are in the FTL list, maybe some of these may get pushed up. So that's where, again, this law is upcoming. And even if you are in that industry where where you have products in that food traceability list, probably based on my experience in life sciences, I would say that it is better to start as early as possible, because you learn. FDA is asking for basically feedback. You're able to provide your input and basically manage those things which kind of help you in your favor, rather than leaving it for the others to decide. And also, sometimes doing things early gives you a strategic and competitive advantage, because once this thing comes in play, you are already on your path way ahead than your competitors, which kind of gives you a strategic competitive advantage.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's really smart and good advice. And something else to consider for our listeners is the kind of the people aspect, right? So listen, if you're the CEO or president of a company, you can pull together different department leaders that are impacted and say, hey, here's what we want to do. Like, here's the discussion, here's the vision, this needs to be done by X time frame, and get back to me depending on the size of the organization. If maybe you're a department head that has good authority, you can run this up and talk about the value and impact. But if you're, let's say, at a director or management level, getting buy-in from senior leadership might take a little bit more time. A lot of the explaining, of course, we're happy if you want to share this deck or need anything from us to help support you on this process and journey. But understanding the how we're minimizing risk and the ROI and the opportunities and the storytelling and getting with the marketing team. And marketing usually gets pretty excited about this, believe it or not, because they get a great story to tell. But there's an organization we're working with that is we're literally rebuilding a lot of their brand around their traceability initiatives, and it's worked for them. They're a current client, and we're recognized by a major industry publication for their transparency initiatives. So it can have certainly a ripple effect on the organization. So anything else you want to add as far as what companies should do, Manish, on this one before we go to the final poll?
Yeah. So again, the bottom line or the message which I would like to share is to start small. If you're already onto the path of the journey, basically you need to figure if first of all you need to have a key driver identified why you are moving towards this journey. And once you have this driver identified and you know that this is the path you would like to go, then basically come up with a roadmap wherein you try small and then basically grow as you move down this journey. Right. So just to do a quick recap, we talked about a new term called a traceability management system. And those who have been following IT systems may have heard many of these short terms like CRM, customer relationship management, SRM, supplier relationship management, ERP, enterprise resource planning, etc., etc. And the way at least I characterize the traceability management system is a more like a capability. Maybe one of your existing systems may be having this capability, but in the end, what I see a traceability management system do is be a single source of truth, or be a single source of a repository for all your traceability and transparency needs, and should be able to, at minimum, be able to provide what, say, at least in food sector, what maybe the FDA may be asking as a part of a smarter food initiative. But more than that, if you are anyway going down that path, be able to capture a lot of other data elements and quality attributes and documents, so that if required, you should be able to get it at the click of a button. The TMS, or the traceability management system, can scale up to provide a lot of other functionalities, at least for smaller companies, because it will provide you good visibility of inventory, transactions, documents, etc., etc. In fact, to be part of this journey, get a buy-in, basically you need to have a kind of a driver or a business case identified to why you would like to go as a part of this journey. And we did discuss some of the drivers. Regulatory reasons are probably a big driver, but apart from that, there is an increased demand coming in from customers and brands, basically, who want to differentiate themselves from others, are basically also going down this path, because this kind of, as we have seen, increases your brand loyalty. If you are going for this journey, we did talk about how to kind of start small, maybe even start with spreadsheets, and then slowly kind of move towards a system like this once you have your house in order. And this is, as I keep saying, is not a sprint, is a marathon. So this will entail some amount of change management if you are not basically having this kind of capability, and if you are planning to go down this path, because as you very quickly will realize, even if you try to do it on a spreadsheet, it will involve some amount of changes in your existing practices and processes, because if you can't put it on a paper, you won't be able to do it on a system.
So, Manish, thank you so much for all this information. Hopefully you can hang on for us and help with some of the Q&A. Thanks, everybody. Don't leave just yet. We're going to go to questions and answers, but this will conclude our presentation, and we're going to Q&A.